This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to stand up immediately. My wife and child are stuck badly.
Okay, you said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison?
Sir?
You said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison?
Yes, sir. 4147 Moselle Road.
Stay on the line with me, okay? Yes, sir. Stay on the line with me, okay?
How did they shoot? Did they shoot themselves?
Oh, no. Hell no.
Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennel. I can tell that he shot in the head, and he shot really bad. He shot really bad.
So, Chief McCoy, could you tell us how you observed the victims when you got to the scene?
Deputy Green went through the scene first. He actually drove a little ways in between the kennels and the lean-to. It was very dark, so he needed his headlights to see what was going on there. There was animals in the kennels. I don't know how many, but there was also some chickens fluttering around on the equipment on the right-hand side. The body of a younger male subject was face down by the kennels. He had some very severe injuries to the head. And there was a female subject at the end of the lean-to. She was also face down with severe injuries to her head. And there was a gentleman standing off a little distance away from it, and he was on a cell phone and seemed very upset.
Did you recognize that gentleman?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that?
Alex Murdaugh.
And at this point, did you check his pulse?
I did not check his pulse. He and his mother both had injuries that we consider incompatible with life. There was a lot of coagulation there where the blood had congealed, and they were not currently bleeding, which would indicate they did not have a heartbeat. And obviously, with his type of injuries, he, is not any way you could sustain his life.
And State's Exhibit 51.
That is Miss Maggie, and she also had severe injuries to her head. You can also see the congealed blood around the bottom where her face is, and she had a hole in her head to where you could actually see inside of her head cavity.
Was it necessary to check Mrs. Murdaugh's pulse or perform any life-saving treatment?
No, ma'am. And she also had injuries that were not sustainable.
And have you reviewed the contents of that CD?
Yes, sir, I have.
And what is the contents of that CD?
It is a video I found on Paul Murdaugh's phone. The video looks like inside maybe a kennel area with a fence around it, and a dog, I believe to be a lab, where he's trying to take a video of the tail of the dog.
Okay. All right. And that's what you see in that video.
Yes, sir.
What do you hear in the video?
You hear 3 different voices in the video. You can tell because they're so different, you can tell that they're different voices.
Did you hear any other voices when you were on the phone with Paul about 8:40?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
I heard Miss Maggie,
And who else did you hear?
and I thought it was Mr. Ellick that I heard.
You thought it was Mr. Ellick. You talked to Paul, and what did y'all talk about? What was he going to do?
He was going to try to FaceTime me. He
And-
said, you know how the service is out here. He said, if I can't get the FaceTime to go through, I'll send you a video.
And why was he going to FaceTime you? What's the difference between FaceTime and a regular call?
So I could see what was wrong with the dog.
And y'all talked about how the service is out here?
That's correct.
And what did you mean by that?
Most of the time you got enough service to make a call. I mean, sometimes the calls would break up, but a FaceTime, couldn't really get a whole lot of service to make the FaceTime call. It's kind of lagging.
Y'all have had problems with that before?
That's correct.
Did y'all discuss what to do if the FaceTime didn't work?
We did.
And what was the discussion?
He was going to send me a video of it, of the dog.
He was going to video it and then do what with it? Text it to you?
That's correct.
Is that the last time you ever talked to your friend?
That was.
Time went on after the murders. Did you go to Moselle where all the family and friends were gathering?
I did.
Were you there a fair amount?
Probably the whole part of later that week.
While you were there at the house where the family and friends had gathered, did anyone ever ask you about your last contact with Paul?
There was.
And who asked you?
Grandma.
And that being Miss Brandstutter?
That's correct.
Maggie's mother?
That's correct.
And what did you say?
I told her, that I talked to Paul about the dog, and told her that I heard Miss Maggie in the background, and I heard a male voice that I thought was Mr. Elliott.
Was he in the room then?
Yes.
And as time went on and you were asked about who you heard on the phone that night, that call at 8:40, you said, hey, I thought it was Alec, but I can't be sure.
That's correct.
Told law enforcement the night of, 99% sure, correct?
Say that question again, please.
Told law enforcement the next day, June 8th, that you were 99% sure. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As time went on, you said, I thought it was Alec, but I can't be sure.
That's correct.
In November of 2022, did law enforcement ask you to come in and look at a video?
They did.
And what was on that video?
It was the video. Paul was supposed to take a cash. Cash was on the video.
And did you recognize the voices on there?
I did.
Did you recognize the voices of your second family?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
Paul's, Miss Maggie, and Mr. Elliott.
And how sure are you now?
Positive.
100%?
That's correct.
Did you recognize any voices on that video?
The three voices on that video are the voices of Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh.
And how sure are you? How sure are you?
I'm 100% sure that's whose voices are on that, the audio there.
Ms. Blanca, had you seen that before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think maybe in prior statements or something that had you said, do you recognize voices on there?
Yes, sir.
Who do you recognize?
It's Paul, Maggie, Alec.
On TV, have you seen it?
I have. There's only three voices, Alec, Maggie, and Paul.
So after hearing it several times, is that your conclusion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Murdaugh, is that you? On the Kennel video at 8:44 p.m. on June 7th, the night Maggie and Paul were murdered.
It is.
Were you in fact at the Kennels at 8:44 p.m. on the night Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I was.
Did you lie to Sled Agent Owen and Deputy Laura Rutland on the night of June 7th and told them that you stayed at the house after dinner?
I did lie to them.
Did you lie to Agent Owen and Agent Croft on the follow-up interview on June 10th that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was at dinner?
I did lie to them.
And in the interview of August 11th, did you tell Agent Owen and Agent Croft, did you lie to them by telling them that you were not down at the Kennels on that night?
Yes.
About what time do you recall receiving this video, to the best of your recollection?
It was later in the afternoon. I believe it was after I cooked dinner, so probably around 7 o'clock, sometime in there.
Is that the video you saw?
Yes, it is.
And that was on the afternoon or the evening of June 7th, 2021?
That's correct.
Clothes that he was wearing, at least in that video you saw, on the evening of June 7th, 2021?
Yeah, those are the clothes I saw in the video.
Long pants and a shirt?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And those particular shoes?
Yes, sir.
And you watched that video in real time when it came in from Paul's phone that evening, is that correct?
That is correct.
Another night. After the murders, did he ever spend another night at Moselle, to your knowledge?
He did not.
So when he left that night, on the night of the 7th, and went to his mother and father's house, you don't know what clothes he took with him, what shoes he was wearing? You have no idea, correct?
That is correct.
Were you aware that SWED had confiscated the clothes that he had on?
At that moment, I didn't.
Okay. Well, you are now.
Yes, sir, I do know that.
Okay. A white T-shirt, pair of shorts that he showed you, and whatever shoes he had on, some sneakers, right?
I didn't see the sneakers, but I saw the clothing items.
Okay. And so he had to put on, if they did that, other clothes to go over to his mother's house, correct?
Objection.
Would it stand to reason he'd have to put on other clothes or go in his underwear?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay. Do you know what he wore over to his mother's house?
No, sir.
Do you know whether he wore those shoes?
No, sir.
You don't know. So
You're on objection to. Objection.
Basis for the objection. To which question?
To that last one, shoes. I don't know what specificity he says to those shoes. I don't know what he's.
I'm sorry. The shoes that you say you saw in the Snapchat photo, you say you never saw again, right?
That is correct.
Okay. You don't know whether he wore those shoes the night of the 7th over to his mama's house, do you?
I don't know that. I wasn't
Okay.
there.
You don't know what he wore over there, correct?
That's correct. I wasn't there.
He may have even worn that shirt that you said you never saw again, correct?
Objection.
Objection's overruled.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if somebody alleged that those khaki pants was what Alex was wearing the night of the...
I'm going to object.
I need to hear the question.
I can't finish the question. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Let me state this. If somebody were to say that Alex Murdaugh, as ridiculous as it sounds, was wearing those khaki pants when he...
Objection.
Objection sustained.
Okay. Let me put it this way. Did you see any blood on those khaki pants?
No, sir.
He washed them, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you put anything on them to get blood stains out? I mean, would there be...
Are you been saying that I removed bloodstains off of khaki pants?
I'm asking you rhetorically. I'm asking you, did you see any blood stains?
There appeared to be no bloodstains on those pants.
Okay. And in the bathroom, did you see any bloody footprints?
I did not.
Did you see any blood on that towel?
No, sir.
Did you see anything indicating to you there'd been anybody wearing bloody shoes or washing blood off, or anything that would indicate that somebody after a murder had gone back to that room, changed clothes, covered in blood, took a shower and changed clothes? Did you see anything that would indicate that?
Objection's overruled.
Go ahead.
This is the first time that I have ever been in a situation where somebody was murdered.
Right.
I didn't know, as far as what you're asking me, if there was anything bloody in there. No, it did not appear to be anything bloody in there.
Did you clean the shower that day?
Yes, sir, I rinsed it off.
You rinsed it off. Nobody told you not to rinse off the shower?
No, sir.
And during that meeting, did they show you the Snapchat video of you trying to stand up the fruit tree?
Yes.
And were you questioned about what clothing you were wearing?
And I can't remember this. I can't remember if he showed me the whole video or he showed me a picture of it. But I was definitely showed that information. I was definitely shown those clothes in that meeting on August the 11th.
And what clothes were you wearing?
The same ones you see in...
And do you remember what kind of pants?
It was khaki pants.
And what kind of shirt?
It's a button-down, short-sleeve button-down. I call it a dress shirt, but short-sleeve button-down dress shirt.
Like the shirt you got there, but just short
Just
sleeve?
like this, but short-sleeve, and it was colored.
And it was, what color was it?
Blue. Blue with some blue stripes.
And were you questioned about when you changed out of those clothes?
I was.
And did you have a follow-up? Did you have a conversation after that meeting with SLED with Blanca about what you were wearing that day?
Absolutely.
And what was the purpose of the conversation with Blanca?
Well, they made an issue about that in that meeting, and I asked Blanca about those clothes that I had on earlier that day.
Did you ask her specifically about the blue shirt?
I asked her specifically about all the clothes.
Okay.
What I asked Blanca about specifically was, did she remember getting my clothes after she came back? When she came back to Moselle, did she remember getting my clothes? Is specifically what I asked her.
I see. And why were you asking her those questions?
Because on August the 11th, they had made an issue about me still wearing those clothes, not having changed clothes when I was in that Snapchat video. So that's why I went to Blanca.
Did they ever ask you on August the 11th whether, they ask you for those clothes? Can you produce the clothes? Did they ask you that?
No, they didn't.
Have they ever asked you for those clothes?
No. As far as my understanding goes, my clothes were never an issue in this case until y'all figured out, as my lawyers figured out, that there was no blood spatter on me.
Sir?
Is that objection, Your Honor?
Basis for the objection.
401, 402, and beyond in speculation, Your Honor.
Mr. Griffin.
It's a matter of public record. It's a matter of public record.
What is?
The issues with the shirt and the blood test.
It's a matter of public record.
Filed in this case, yes, sir.
The objection is overruled.
I'm well aware that my clothes never became an issue in this case until my lawyers proved that this blood spatter that they said I had on my shirt from my wife and my son was a lie, and that there was no blood on my shirt. And once they filed the documents and they proved that that was a lie, all of a sudden the clothes I was wearing back on that day became an issue. And that's in the weeks leading up to this trial.
He felt this was related to the boat case, and you indicated you knew about the boat case. You read about the boat case.
That's correct.
And in the boat case, Paul had been charged with 3 counts of felony DUI, killing a young girl and wounding 2 others, correct?
I don't know much details about that case. I really don't.
Okay. But Mr. Murdaugh indicated to you that the threats made against Paul.
He did.
And that he even got in a fight once about it.
I believe he said punched.
Punched, okay. And so on the scene, he believed that Paul's death was connected to someone angry about the boat case, correct?
Object to that, Your Honor, as to what he believed. Asking the witness what another person believed.
Objection is overruled.
Thank you. On the scene, Mr. Murdaugh indicated to you he thought the death of his son was related to his son's involvement in the death of the young lady and the injury of 2 others in the boat case, correct?
It appeared that that's what he was getting at, yes.
Oh, should have known.
Allie, we just heard you say, I should have known. What are you referring to?
I said, Paul, I should have known.
What were you referring to?
I was referring to Paul got so many threats. Didn't take serious. Think twice about. So I'm just telling him, Paul, I should have known. I don't specifically remember saying that, but I can clearly hear myself say that.
Okay. What kind of threats did you understand Paul was receiving?
I mean, Paul got He got the most vile threats. I mean, the stuff that was on social media, I mean, it was... I mean, you couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe it. It was so over the top. Truthfully, we didn't think anything about it. I mean, it was just so crazy that, you know, we just, I mean, people talking about what he was going to get and how they were going to do this and get him. And I mean, it's stuff you really, I mean, we disregarded it because it's so over the top. Thought it's so over the top.
You talked about yesterday in great detail about the boat case, which you brought up on the 911 call and to Daniel Green, and then of course in this first interview, correct?
I did mention the boat wreck.
All right, and you described that. Do you remember what you said in this interview about the boat wreck?
Not specifically.
About specifically the other people involved in the boat wreck? You don't remember specifically? Do you remember specifically? I guess you said no.
I remember talking about the boat wreck, and I know that I talked about the boat wreck.
All right. Well, I'm going to play now from 1714.
Any direct threats between any of the people on the boat specifically, but I do think there's been a small amount of yip-yap between a couple of them, but not recently.
Okay. What was the term you used for that? A small amount of yip-yap?
Yeah, and just to be clear, Mr. Waters, there was never, ever a point in time where I thought that the people that were involved in the boat wreck did this to Paul and Maggie. Okay. I've never thought that.
All right. I never thought that, but it's literally one of the first things that you said out of the 911 call.
Nah, that's not what I said. I never, ever, ever under any point in time believed that those kids that were riding in that boat or their parents or their families. I didn't believe that any of the families, the people that were involved in the boat wreck, had anything to do with hurting Maggie and Paul. Okay. But I can tell you that at that time, and as I sit here today, that I believe that boat wreck is the reason why Paul and Maggie were killed.
Okay.
And I'm certain. I believe that.
This defendant, on the other hand, has fooled everyone who thought they were close to him, everyone who thought they knew he was who he was. He's fooled them all. And he fooled Maggie and Paul too. And they paid for it with their lives. Don't let him fool you too.
Docket number 2022 GS 15-00592, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions in the term of 2022, July, the State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116. Okay. Guilty verdict. Signed by the forelady, 3/2/23. Docket number 2022-GS-15-00593, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions, the July term of 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116, verdict guilty, signed by the forelady, date 3/2/23. Docket number 2022-GS15-00595, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code -16-23-0490. CDR Code 0549. Verdict, guilty. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Date 3/2/23. Docket number 2022 GS-15-00594. The State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code 16-23-0490. CDR Code 0549. Verdict, guilty. Signed by the foreperson of the jury, 3/2/23.
I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Paul.
All right, Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for a term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably love so much. I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life. Those sentences will run consecutive